Paul Ryan. Okay, I've spent the last few shows looking specifically at acoustic music, bluegrass and folk music and others. From the Bristol sessions, we looked at those. We looked at acoustic and bluegrass artists. We looked at builders. And before that, the sessions were more of a broader overall view of music, from the history to its earliest melody. And then we looked at some of the great artists, some of the top selling artists, great songwriters. And even we did a session or a show on how the human brain processes music. Today represents a major shift. Today, I'm going to change the discussion back to the wider view of overall music industry, but this time I'm going to look at it from the business side, namely revenues. So first up today, look at record labels. Record labels have become smaller today than they were prior to streaming, but they remain a formidable force within the industry. How did labels become so intertwined with the music industry? When was the beginning, and how did they evolve? Before the music world ever heard of streaming and downloads, sound recordings were etched onto wax cylinders or even captured by smoke from an oil lamp. Smoke, that was our first hint of music. In 1860, Clair de la Lune, the phone autograph was invented by Edward Leon Scott de Martinville, patented in France in March 25, 1857, and then April 9th, 1860, Scott recorded someone singing the song Au Clair de la Lune, in English, By the Light of the Moon. It transcribed sound waves as undulations or other deviations in a line traced on smoke-blackened paper. So smoke and oil lamps captured the very first recording of the human voice known to exist. In 1889, Brahms placed his Hungarian Dance No. 1. He was recorded on a wax cylinder playing one of his Hungarian dances. There's much debate as to whether his voice is heard on the recording, whether that's Brahms himself, but what's definitely sure is him on the piano. 1888, the Lost Chord, Arthur Sullivan. Sullivan composed the Lost Chord in 1877, and then a year later it was etched onto a phonograph cylinder. Sullivan was astonished at his new technology, but he had his reservations as well. Quote, "I can only say that I'm astonished and somewhat terrified at the result of this evening's experiments. Astonished at the wonderful power you have developed, and terrified at the thought that so much hideous and bad music may be put on record forever." End quote. 1890, Tchaikovsky speaks. In 1890, a group of musicians gathered in Russia to look at state-of-the-art technology, then the unit called a phonograph cylinder. Among the group were composers Tchaikovsky, Anton Rubinstein, pianist and conductor Vasily Kavanaugh, and music-loving businessman Julius Bloch, and others. And here it is. I hope this shows up on the audio. This is from 1890, Tchaikovsky. $1890, it was Tchaikovsky speaks, and that was a phonograph cylinder that captured that. The very first formal record label was Edison Records. They made phonograph cylinders in 1888, and Edison was the first to use the technology to become a record label. A year later, Edward Easton founded Columbia Records. Columbia was the first to release a long play, or LP, record. It was Mendelssohn's Violin Concerto in E minor. Columbia, of course, remains to this day. Once recording technology took root, major artists of the day began to work with teams, among them record labels, promoters, agents, and other team members. So from the late century and well into the 20th, depending on the artist, the role of the record label varied from cutting a record and recording it to providing other services as well. An industry was taking shape, the music industry. Today's featured song is called Solitary Star. It's a short autobiography of sorts, not precisely, but generally. It's about a person who sees himself or herself when gazing up at the stars, finding simpatico, finding that star that always seems to follow its own path.
When just a young boy I gaze up at the sky, I'd watch every night when one star caught my eye. Was stuck way in deep in a crowd, so it seemed, caught in the path of a white starry stream. I watched as that star calmly drifted so slow to a place way up high where no others would go, in its own space and away from the rest. I watched its glow bright and seemed carefree at last. Now sometimes I think of that star breaking free, was just like my own life has turned out to be. Always at home, away from the crowd, away from the towers and bright lights downtown. Some time ago, I took a deep breath, turned down a good job to start on a new path, away from the hearth and towards the unknown, racing ahead with just spirit and hope. I've done it alone and I've done it my way, followed that star where it moved every day, away from the rush, right from the start. A solitary life that has followed the heart. It's true that I've made some mistakes, to be sure, but I'm not one designed to be safe and secure. Now when I watch for that star that broke free, it shines like a mirror right back at me.
Time now to take a look at what is going on in the musical life of Freddie Spaghetti.
In last week's episode of The Musical Life of Freddie Spaghetti, Freddie and Bob Hackett were meeting to discuss Freddie's music. To make his living as a touring musician, Hackett had studied and kept up to date on the music business and how to survive in it. A couple of years ago, he bought a computer to help advertise his gigs and spread the word about his music. He knows all about how to get songs into online stores, how to run social media campaigns, and how to keep in touch with people in the business. Hackett's a much older man than Freddie, and he's also more up to date on the current business and computer and tech side of music. Hackett likes Freddie and sees him both as a kindred spirit and raw but potentially huge talent. One that just maybe someday might help with his own career. As Freddie sits down and explains his dilemma, Hackett squints, straining to understand what is his young friend's problem. Finally, it becomes clear. Freddie needs to get more attention for his videos and songs, but he doesn't know how. After hearing Freddie out and asking a few questions, Bob Hackett makes a few suggestions to the frustrated young musician. Freddie was to do 3 things to get the ball rolling. First, run some ads in the local community newspaper. Its number of readers has been falling, so their rates are going down and it's getting cheaper, but they still had a decent audience. Secondly, social media. Get out there and get an audience. Give them some music. Make some friends. And third, Freddie asks. Hackett pumped his fist to make the point. Son, you've got a gift. Get into a studio and get those songs of yours into the stores. Now Freddie was really stumped. Nobody goes into music stores anymore. In fact, he couldn't even think of one in Cherry Creek. Online. Hackett laughed. Online stores, like Apple and them ones? Hi, it's Paul Ryan here. Thank you so much for spending your time with me here on Sound Threads. I hope you enjoyed the show and hope you'll join me next week for another edition of Sound Threads.